So if they die for good, you can't use them, obviously, but it gets worse than that. And this is where I think there's a lot of...
It's worse! Hi, everybody. This is Jason.
This is Pete.
And this is the Lost Legions podcast.
Your weekly Horus Heresy show.
And what are we here to talk to them about today, Pete?
The Onslaught Campaign from the new Cathonia book.
The Onslaught Campaign. So, okay, spoilers. I haven't played this, but Pete has. So I'm going to sit down and we're going to dig into it. And we're going to find out if Pete had a good time, if Pete no longer likes James, if Pete won, and how the mission went. So first off, what is the Onslaught Campaign?
Yeah, so
let everybody know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, cool, man. So yeah, me and James are currently going through the campaign. So we're not concluded. We're a game or two in, so we're just going through the motions of it all. But it's been great fun, so I wanted to talk about it. So ultimately, the Onslaught Campaign is a way for you to play your games of Horus Heresy in a linking set of games, like any other campaign you'd expect, really, kind of standardized thing. It's usually kept to 5 games, and whoever wins the 5th game will ultimately becomes the decisive player, and that goes on to like round out the campaign, all that sort of stuff. But it's essentially a way of playing a load of games linked together. You add lots of narrative elements into it if you wish to. You've got the Cathonia campaign in the book. We're not doing that one. We're just doing the generic Onslaught Campaign setup. That's what we've been doing.
Okay, so just to clarify, there's 3 different kind of campaign systems in the book then, right? Or mission systems. There's the Zone Mortalis ones, there's the Cathonia ones, and sorry guys, and there's the middle finger counting, and there is these Onslaught campaigns that you guys are playing, which you're saying is like the generic ones that anyone can take and play, and they don't have to play the actual Cathonia campaign. No,
exactly. So they released 4 new core missions, which I'm not going to go into too much detail about, but they're some new ways to play the game by themselves anyway, which I think is great. They're all 4 game turn missions, which I think has been the biggest criticism, I guess, for lack of a better expression. But I think time will tell if that's good or bad.
Yeah, I saw that when I was looking through the missions, and that was interesting. So you have to let us know. We'll talk about that a little bit more later down the line, I guess.
Yeah. But yeah, a way of using those missions, you could use. There's no reason why you couldn't use any missions in this Onslaught Campaign system, then. Okay, so you can use any missions you like. I actually think we probably will dip a Zone Mortalis mission into the campaign.
Oh, so there's missions, and then there's the campaign framework.
The campaign framework is irrelevant of the missions to a degree. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that actually sounds really cool.
Yeah.
So let's jump into this. So what are the key differences then from a regular game of Heresy? I guess we're already kind of tackling some of them, but why don't you take us through them?
Yeah, so the biggest difference that I've noticed so far, it's really fun. I was a bit like, is this going to be good or not? But yeah, so far it's good, is the stratagems and using them in the game. So they changed the way you set up a game incredibly. Okay, so firstly, there are 10 to choose from. At the beginning of each campaign, each player will choose 4 stratagems, right? And you can use 1 stratagem, 0 stratagems, or all 4 stratagems if you wish to in a game. Okay, which is a bit crazy because some of them are quite powerful. However, you can't choose. Each stratagem is a one use only in the campaign, so you can't just copy and paste all your stratagems that you want to use. You have to choose different ones, and if you
have 10 or something, and you
10 to choose from. Once. Yeah. You choose
10?
4. So there's a selection of 10 currently.
I literally just guessed.
Yeah. So there's 10 stratagems, and it says select 4 before the campaign. Secretly select 4 before the campaign, and then as you come up to game 1, you can choose to use none, 1, or all, or any number in between of the available stratagems that you've chosen. So if me and you, Jay, were about to play a game, or we're scheduling a game for the first game of the campaign, I might go, I'm going to use, and to give you an example, the first cut stratagem, which means I get to choose which player deploys first and which player goes first.
But you can only use this once in the 5-game campaign.
Correct. And you could
that's cool.
And you could choose to use another one is big guns never tire. And that allows you to take an extra heavy support choice in the Force org chart.
Right. Okay. So then I could use 4, but it would only be for that one game.
Exactly. Now, giving the example of the first cut one, where I used that in my first game, and so did James. So the rule with the first cut, where you're choosing which player deploys first and which player goes first, you both just resolve to a roll off as normal, and the winner wins, and then the loser has lost that stratagem for the entire game. So James won the roll off. James is like, you can deploy first, and I'm going first, right? So it hurt a lot, but not in a super bad way. It's quite interesting to say the least. So that's cool.
I like that. So there's some risk around it too.
Yeah.
Like if you both use the same stratagem at the same time, you roll off and then got it. I guess if they conflict like that.
Yeah, exactly. Now we played the game, it ended. We then, bearing in mind, we've already chosen our list of stratagems before the campaign started. We've got the second game scheduled, and I've chosen, there's one that lets you boost your deployment zone in a certain area, so you can increase your deployment zone border by 6 inches for one of them. And James has picked another one where his deep striking units come in on a 2+ rather than a 3+, right? So it lets you really shift all this stuff around. But you do this, this is the key part, you do this before army list. So we are now going away, building lists, knowing what stratagems the opponent is going to be running.
So,
which is really interesting.
It's not lending itself very well to like without some adaptation to an event. No,
you would not want to do this for an event. If you would, you'd play like a 2,000 point event and bring a 3,000 point board to choose units and play different stratagems for. Yeah, that's kind of the idea, I think.
So you could do a sideboard and take a core list.
That's what I would suggest, yeah, for sure. Yeah. But it's a great way of theming your forces around all these different features and how you want the army to run and play, and you know what you're coming up against. So I know James is going to want to teleport all these Terminators in with his Imperial Fists. So now I'm thinking, right, I've got to be able to counter that, and it's quite fun. Quite a fun mechanic to kind of have an idea as to what you're going up against.
That's cool.
Or it could be a double bluff, right? You could run that and not run any deep strike. So there's a cool mechanic to it.
So how did James feel about it? Was he enjoying it too?
Yeah, we were both really vibing off each other about picking these and trying to figure out what we're going to take next and playing your cards close to your chest a little bit. It's quite good.
So reading the notes here, and I don't know what this is, so I'm actually really curious. I want Pete to tell me about it. What is the character fatality table?
Yeah, so this is an optional thing which we're running. So we're running with all optional things just to see what the full breadth and depth of this system has to offer, right? So there's the character fatality table. So at the end of a game in the Onslaught campaign, if you've lost your warlord or a character with the unique type, like a named character like Sigismund, right, or Eidolon, for example, or a Primarch, you roll a table. On the roll of a 1, the warlord or model in question dies and they can't be used in future games. That's it. Yeah, cannot be used in future games in this Onslaught campaign. They are gone. That is it. On a 2 to 3, I'm just reading my notes here. Yes, they become badly hurt, so they start with 1 less wounds next game. On a 4 to 5, they become shaken, so they have -1 leadership for next game. On a roll of a 6, they become unscathed, so nothing changes for them. They come back like, yeah, I survived somehow. And on a roll of a 7, which I know doesn't make much sense on a D6, you actually gain +1 attack for your warlord that comes back from the dead. And the only way you can roll a 7 is if you lost your warlord but won the game, you get +1 to your dice roll.
And then you'd have to roll a 6.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's some cool features. The best thing about this...
+1 attack forever? What is...
I'm not sure. I have to double check. I think it might... A lot of them are always for the next game, those effects. So I'm assuming it's the same. yeah, drop a comment on this if you're not sure. If you know, sorry.
So what happens when you lose a character for good? What happens when they die?
So if they die for good, you can't use them, obviously, but it gets worse than that. And this is where I think there's a lot of...
It's worse!
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting features with this. So if you, for example, Jay, had a Praetor as your warlord, and your warlord's dead, you can no longer take a Praetor choice for the Onslaught campaign.
Okay.
So then if you now put your Delegatus in command...
Yep.
And you also lose your Delegatus, you've got no Master of the Legion available. So you lose Rights of War. So your command structure crumbles.
Oh man, so this sounds like a job for the Pale Count who sits in his Land Raider and like doesn't come out for most of the game.
Yeah. I mean, it's super unlikely that you're going to roll 2 1s on both of your Master of the Legion models in a 5-game campaign, but it is going to happen. You're going to end up having a Vigilator being the warlord, leading the remnants of a scattered force.
So what happens if the warlord? What happens if your warlord is not like if it's just a normal centurion? What if it's a librarian or something? Like, what is the
same? If it's the if you lose your warlord,
the warlord, okay,
the warlord, that type that was the warlord is lost.
What if it's just another character? Like, what if it is just a librarian, secondary character?
No, it has to be the warlord, yeah. That rule is only for the warlord or a named character. But you can't take duplicates of named characters anyway, can you? So that's fine. So yeah, I really like it. I kind of like the idea of, like, do you send out your Delegatus first, knowing that you've then got your Praetor for future games, for example. You might not make your Praetor your warlord. You can make any HQ your warlord, right? Keep your Praetor as a beat stick. There's a number of different things, and it starts to mess around with, which I quite like.
It's really interesting, especially like what happens if you lose both of them and you roll once, and you're like, I got to change my entire list.
Yeah.
So what about seize the moment rolls?
Cool. So when the game's done, so in mine and James's case, James won the game quite convincingly. The way that you progress the campaign is that you're trying to bring the campaign to a decisive battle. Okay, so the campaign will never be any more than 6 games total, and at the end of the 5th game, it will always go to a decisive battle. Whoever wins the 5th game. The more games in a row you win, the more easily the decisive battle roll is to make. So James has won 1 game so far. So on a roll of a 6+ on 1 dice, he would be in a position to push the campaign to a decisive battle. Okay. The perks of pushing the game to a decisive battle is whoever wins the decisive battle wins the campaign.
Okay.
And the person who won the role of the decisive battle is the only player who is allowed to play stratagems in that final mission.
Okay.
Right.
And you can play as many stratagems as you want.
Yes, but you don't. They don't reboot. So, for example, you might not play any stratagems through games 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Be faced with the opportunity to, I can't think if it's a 4+ or a 5+ to win the decisive battle. You might make the roll and then be like, well, screw it. I'm going to use all 4 stratagems in my final game and make sure.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
So there's an economy with the stratagems. Yeah. You got the economy.
So you might want to hold on to them. You might not want to use one a game. You don't have enough to use one a game. But the decisive battle can make the campaign shorter when it triggers. And is it automatic on the 5th game or something?
On the 5th game, it's automatic. Whoever wins the 5th game, it automatically, that person has pushed the campaign to the decisive battle. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, got it. So the decisive battle basically can trigger beforehand, which will end the campaign earlier, or you play a series of 5 games.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And you can
that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. And I think you could just do it because there's no reason why you'd have to play the same points. You can play a 1,500 point. I mean, one of the stratagems is lose the entry points limitations for taking a Primarch, for example. So you could like do a 1,500-point game and take a Primarch, right, in Zone Mortalis or something crazy, right?
Hey, let's play a 500-point game.
Yeah.
Have you met my buddy Alfarius?
Yeah. Okay. So there's lots of things. There's a Remembrancers one. I can't remember what it's called now off the top of my head. It's bloody cool though. You each victory point you score, I think it's on a 4+, you gain an additional victory point. And the whole fluff behind it is it doesn't matter how the story. It doesn't matter what happened in the battle. It's how the story was told afterwards. So it's like, yeah, we destroyed them. We absolutely took that planet and sacked it. And you're just like racking victory points as a result. So it's really, some of them are really flavorful, right? A little bit broken perhaps, but I think that's not the idea here, right? The idea here is you end up just forging a crazy narrative as you go through it. Which leads me on to my last point with the decisive battles. And I want to do another episode on this, talking about Apex missions as me and James reach that part of our campaign and really do a closeout of what the highlights and lowlights of the campaign was and the system as a whole. But Apex missions, there are 2 in the new Cathonia book. They are Cathonia orientated, so they are narratively fed from the Cathonia campaign, but you could use them in the regular Onslaught campaign. And these 2 missions aren't balanced missions at all. So firstly, both players have to agree that they're happy to play an Apex mission. Otherwise, a core mission is played for the decisive battle. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But one of the Apex missions, for example, is one of the forces starts with 3,000 points. The other force starts with... Sorry, one force starts with 25% higher points than the defender's force, for example. And the example it gives in the book is the attacker has 3,750 points, the defender has 3,000 points. And it goes on to say that if you're not tailoring and list building to these missions, you will have a rough time. So that's quite cool. But again, it's just adding in these different spins on how to play the game. So yeah,
so it's basically balancing it 50-50 so someone can play Imperial Fists on an even footing.
Exactly, yeah. How'd you know? Jesus.
Not bitter. Tell me how many games you won against James.
Bitter juicy. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Now, James just couldn't stop rolling 6s and I couldn't stop rolling 1s. That was the big issue.
It's the Imperial Fist special ability. They just roll 6s all the time. So
yeah, that's pretty much that, really.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Anything else to add? Or I mean, it sounds cool. I want to try it out. Maybe, hopefully we could get a chance to try this later on too, but this sounds like really cool. So if you guys have tried it or you want to try it, let us know what you think about it. And
nothing else to add. Catch you next one.
Bye.
Bye.